Okay.
Oh,
We're good.
Okay. So this question was, what is the significance of Rochester's wife to the novel, and how does she reveal something about how men and women relate to each other in the mid-Victorian world? Well, just to read this again. So men had this like specific idea of how women had to act. They had to have one personality, they had to be perfect, they had to cater to their husbands. And so they really couldn't have much of a personality, they couldn't have an opinion, they just had to, or flaws, they just had to basically do whatever the husband said, because that is kind of how they had power in some sense, because they married someone who was rich.
When in the reading, a quote that kind of goes along with that, it says that every woman in a patriarchal society must meet and overcome oppression, starvation, madness, and coldness. So, like, they have to get past all of it because of the perception that men have of them.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because Jane definitely, she shows all of those feelings, like to some point madness, especially when she's at the very beginning locked in the red room, like she starts seeing ghosts, and then oppression, and then what is it, like poverty, like when she gives up, when she's begging on the street. So like even though Jane was trying to be different than otherwise, she went through all of those, and eventually, it's true, with Rochester, she definitely had a lot more freedom. Like, she wasn't, I think that's kind of why Rochester leaned towards her, was because she was different. She brought out, good characteristics in him, and then her as well. But in a sense, like, Jane went through all of those as well. But she was trying to avoid, which is why she said no to St. John, because she knew that she would just be very stagnant. Static is all over the place, but just like linear. Like there would be no progression. She would just be a wife.
Yeah, and she was able to actually like move past those. Like the trials came, she dealt with them and got past it. But Bertha couldn't deal with it, and so she actually went crazy and psycho.
Well, I mean, you're locked into a room all by yourself.
After she went crazy though.
I mean, I guess, but
it didn't help. Yeah, it did not help.
But like they didn't even really like each other or know each other very much, and then they got married. And, of course, maybe she reacts differently because they didn't even know each other. They were still getting to know each other. They had no idea who they were.
Let me see. I think in the text it talks about Rochester when he talked. Oh, goodness. Where it talks about, Rochester he didn't love her. All he wanted was the money and the security. And then he says, but there was no love in the relationship.
That's what women were. They were kind of objects.
They aspired to be in a relationship where there was no love. Because that was the happy ending for them, was just being in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. But I guess Rochester kind of wanted something more, even though he kind of fell into the whole, I need someone who's just linear, like there's nothing.
But I just wonder if he had married Jane instead, and he was the rich one, would she be in that same situation of being, oppressed because of maybe her opinions or ideas? But instead, in the end, he was, blind? How was he going to suppress her in any sort of way? She was the one caring for him. If that didn't happen, if things were a little bit differently, who knows, how Jane would have been.
Yeah.
But she still had that fear. When she saw Bertha, she thought, this could be me. What if he does this to me? What if I become someone he doesn't care about anymore?
Which is just terrible.
What if he
loves It's true. But I mean, I don't know. You kind of have that. Especially, Rochester's, past love life wasn't clean either. You know what I mean? Bertha obviously is, an extreme, but all the other women that he'd been with,
the French lady.
It just wasn't, Jane, I asked myself that too. But so moving on, I guess not moving on, but in addition to that, I thought it was interesting how in the reading, it really does say how Bertha was what Jane really wanted to be. And those two dreams that she had of the little girl sitting on her lap and then falling off and her passing out, how that was Jane as a child with older Jane, but then it was like Bertha was the emotional, the psychotic, and the poor side of the woman that didn't handle very well. But that's what Jane wanted to do. I think it said like Jane wanted to rip up her veil, and Jane wanted to rip up the dress, but she didn't. So Bertha did it, but that's who she really wanted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I thought of another example would be like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. How Jane, like Dr. Jekyll definitely wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to be the good person, but he took it too far, and so he had Dr. Hyde who did all the horrible things, and so kind of like this, like, and Jane's not doing horrible things, obviously, but we have like the Dr. Hyde perspective of women need to be perfect, and then the Dr. Jekyll, which is Bertha, where it's like, yeah, but trust me, every woman wants to throw around some chairs and burn some things, okay? So, just the comparison between the two.
Then I think she's also kind of like the stereotype of, in that time, women are like irrational and crazy and like, this
Very
happened,
true.
but it's not really that big of a deal because like, she's a woman.
She's
what
a
can
woman.
we say?
That's what they do.
She's crazy. It
Mm-hmm.
happens to everyone.
But, like, I think that Bertha is definitely kind of, like, a feminist, you know? Like, she represents what a lot of people want today. Like, their own opinions and their own thoughts, and they want to act and dress and do things a certain way. And I think that was, like, really important. That she was something that everyone else, like, tried not to be, even if they wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, like, relevant to today,
Yeah.
I feel like.
It's true, because same in the text, or in the manuscript that we read, it talked about, like, feminism and how everyone was, like, appalled with Jane Eyre because it had, like, the suppressed sexual feelings and the feminism and the psychotic, but it's just, like, it's the same, I guess, not the same, but, like, PC, like, oh my gosh, that's so awful, but it's, like, but people read it because they want to read awful things, because inwardly it's like, oh, we agree with Bertha, you know?
Yeah.
We totally want to, you know, be a feminist in some areas. And so, exactly. But, and so, just the scandal of Jane Eyre. But everyone loved it. Because we all love scandals. Why do we read tabloids? Because we love scandals. Oh, it's good gossip.
Stereotyping women. That's us.
That's right. Teachers. Slash.
So Bertha kind of represented like someone that we can all relate to, but that we don't want to.
Yeah.
No one wants to admit that we relate to Bertha more than anyone. Oh my goodness.
So kind of something to add to the men and women relationship. I noticed like when I was looking through it, there was like a pattern of the women rely on the men, like to pay for them to work, to take care of them, to marry them. Like women are nothing without man. So even though Bertha's something that he doesn't want, she still is reliant on him because he gives her a place to live, and that's like,
Even if it isn't.
men just have to take care of us.
I mean, which is something that we don't really believe in. We believe that men are nothing without women. So it's kind of terrible. Like, I don't know. Like, I like being an independent. I like that I'm gonna get a job, and yeah, one day maybe I'm gonna have kids and I'm not gonna work for a while. But like being able to support my husband when he's going to school, like,
Yeah.
that's gonna be awesome. I don't care if like people don't think it's the right thing to do, but
Which is why I think Jane Eyre was so scandalous at that time, because women, it definitely puts ideas in the women's head where it's like, no, you can be self-sufficient and you don't necessarily need men to do such, even though at that time probably thinking that, even the women at the time probably felt appalled or shocked that they would think that, or that they could actually do that, but inwardly they knew that it was right.
Even the fact that she'd like rather work than get married.
Yeah.
Like, she rejected 2 marriage proposals so that she could
That's so true.
be a teacher.
Because then you read about like other books like written in this era where it's like you don't reject marriage
Like, that's the
proposal.
best you're gonna get.
Like, if we think about Pride and Prejudice.
Oh my gosh.
Pride and Prejudice, okay? When she first denies Mr. Collins. Yeah. And the mom, okay, so I'm thinking more of like the movie, but it's the same. I've read the book like thousands of times. So, but it's like the mom is upset with Elizabeth because she's like, hold up, who's going to take care of you? She's like, we can't take care of you for the rest of your life, so you need a man to take care of you. So it's, sorry.
Even like Mr. Collins, when
Yeah.
she rejects him, he's like, do you really think you're going to get a better offer?
Yeah.
Like,
And then if you watch all the
Terrible.
movies, you're like, no,
The
seriously,
worst.
you can do better than Mr. Collins.
we knew she was going to end up with Darcy.
But I mean, that was the thought. Like, that's why it was so scandalous as well. It's like, you don't reject. And so then it goes back to when Elizabeth's best friend Charlotte accepts Mr. Collins. Like, Elizabeth is appalled. She's like, do ya know the man? Have you seen him, first of all? But it's like, Charlotte says, okay, again, I'm thinking of the movie just because that's the most recent thing I've done. But she's like, I'm 27 years old. I don't have any prospects. My parents can't take care of me. You know, I'm a burden to my family. So it's like, these women are just accepting it. Again, we look at Bertha and Rochester just for the money and the status. They need a home. They don't care about the husband. They just need a home. But you have to marry someone to get home. Anyway, so there's another connection. Jane Austen. Which I guess they wrote kind of at the same time. So the Brontes would have known about Jane Austen.
Yeah.
Bertha is definitely like a rebellion, which I think is the whole point. She wants other women to realize that they can be independent, like Jane or even like Bertha, just to be themselves, which is like kind of awesome. Because I feel like people back then were really like, they couldn't have an opinion, they couldn't say anything. They had to sit down and be quiet and basically just serve their husband, which is just a terrible idea.
Well, even as, I mean, if we
They
think
didn't
back,
love them,
yeah.
which is like horrible. I wouldn't want to.
Love.
I don't want to serve someone I don't love or want to be around or even look at. Like that's just a horrible thing.
And knowing that he married you just for your money.
Yeah. Like, it's like, well, duh, he married me for money. Just kidding. It's different in today's society, but.
Like, you'd think that she'd try and find out if she liked him because she was the one with the money. Like, what did she have?
But even if she had the money, I don't feel like she had much of a choice.
Again, because, it was just.
I think it talks
marriage
about
is like a convenience. Like, it's just. And not only, like, it's more of a business transaction. Like, the fact that a woman can't own necessarily a business or run a business at that time. And especially with how much money she had, like, no one's going to give it to a woman.
Yeah.
So they needed a man, and Rochester it just worked. It was business. It was business. But yeah, I agree. Like, why don't you try to, like, make your marriage work? But then it just, I don't know if it was really ingrained in them to even try.
Well, honestly, if I were her, I would be like, this is my house. This is my money.
Yeah.
You're going to live the way I want you to live. But I mean, I guess, like, in that time, you couldn't really do anything or say anything. Once you got married, it was all theirs, not yours anymore. They took everything from you, basically.
Because when we read in the authors in context about, like, the Bronte sisters and their money, like, what was it? Charlotte's the one that got married, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have a prenup, basically. Because all her money went to her father, I think.
I believe so.
So you have to have a prenup. But, I mean, sometimes women didn't know that they had to do that, you know? Or it was just, it's probably easier just to go with the flow and give your hubby everything. Yeah. It was normal. So, well, Bertha's just a wonderful, static character that brings life to the story, because it's lifeless. But thanks, Jane Eyre.
And kind of another thing with the man and woman relationship is the double standard that's there. Like, obviously there's one, but Rochester can have all of these mistresses and wives, and like he didn't even really get in trouble for having his wife in his attic and trying to get married again. But Jane,
That
like,
is so crazy.
Jane, like, can't marry him because her reputation would be nothing. She'd just be his mistress, and that was terrible, even though he's had a billion of them, and illegitimate child, and crazy woman. So, just kind of like the man can do no wrong, but women really only have one shot.
She made the wrong one.
Yeah, but she made the wrong one because the man she was marrying was not being honest with her.
Yeah.
So then it goes back to the double standard where it's like, the guy doesn't have to say what, he doesn't have to tell her what he's done or...
What would it have been like if she hadn't found out? Like if they'd been married for 10 years and then it was like, what's in this room I've never been in? Oh, just your wife.
Oh.
Who you've been married to for forever.
Or
That would not be okay with me.
the guilt. Like, that's just what I would...
Well, I feel like back then they didn't care.
I guess they didn't care, but some of them had to feel bad, right?
They had to be somewhat religious, right?
Yeah, but it was more of like, I think it was more of like piety, where they were pious, so they were in the act of being religious, but they weren't necessarily
Religious. I guess it worked for them. And they still did whatever they wanted.
I'm sure did.
Church of England, man.
Were they the Church of England?
Church of England.
Whatever.
They
The
were
break off of whatever the heck they were, whatever they were doing. Well, what else?
Let's see.
I mean, I think we did the question. What is significant? Rochester's wife.
Yeah.
And how does it relate something about men and women? We talked about double standards. Probably most evident. The lack of character in one and the expectation of abundance of character of the other.
Really the only other thing I can think about is I'm wondering, like, what's Charlotte, the author, like, what's her perspective of this? Because she portrays Bertha as this, like, crazy person, like, not likable at all. So she doesn't want her to seem like a respectable person, but she still pushes, like, a feminist thing.
Yeah.
So is she saying, like, women shouldn't be like this? Or...
Well, I think it's interesting because then if we look at Charlotte, how many times was Charlotte proposed to? 4 times? Yeah. And she rejected. Well, I guess it was like 3 different guys, right? Because her husband proposed to her once. The dad said no, and then he tried again later, and it was successful. Yeah. But, so, kind of the same, I think it's like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing again, where it was like, Charlotte was just expressing, she was just being honest about the truths of woman life at that time, and she needed a character, and so she put it in a character. It could have also been someone she knew, maybe, because like Helen is based off of her friend in school. The school is based off of the school she went to.
I kind of feel like sometimes St. John is based on her dad. That's who he reminds me of.
A little bit, yeah.
Like this kind of unfeeling person.
Yeah. So that's the thing. She has like characters based off of experiences. I mean, like some of the scenes are based off of experiences that she's lived through. So maybe she had a Bertha. Maybe her neighbor was a Bertha. You know?
Maybe she was a Bertha.
Maybe she was the Bertha.
Because it talks about how Bertha is kind of like Jane Eyre's like other
counterpart.
Yeah, her counterpart. And so really she's like Jane Eyre. She was proposed to. She kind of wanted to be her own independent. And then
she was eventually as well. She supported her future family. So.
And then inside she probably thought all these things about how she wanted to break out. She wanted to have her opinions.
That's
Jane Eyre and Bertha.
Jane Eyre on the outside, Bertha on the inside.
Which I feel like everyone has a little Bertha in all of them.
Yeah. Which I think is also what Charlotte was trying to say, that it's like, no, you relate to Bertha. Like, you're not going to admit it, but there are some parts that you're like, oh, snap. Yep, that's me.
I do want to set men on
I
fire
do,
sometimes.
Oh man. Okay.
Well, now we all know. We
very
all have a
thorough.
little bit
Well,
of Bertha in
feel
us.
We're Bertha sympathizers.
Team Bertha all the way.
Hey, she added life to the story. So, okay. Question 3.